Hello, and welcome to the Outlier and Adapt Podcast, the go-to show for anyone passionate about enhancing design and building in Oz. I'm Anthony, the founder of Outlier, and I'm here with my co-host Jess from Adapt Design Group. We're both deeply committed to designing homes that are not only aesthetically pleasing, but also perform exceptionally well. We regularly sit down to discuss home design and occasionally joined by industry experts. Our goal is to educate and inspire Australians on the possibilities of creating homes that are healthy, comfortable, and energy efficient. Whether you're planning to build your dream home, renovate your current space, or just keen to learn about sustainable design, we invite you to join us each episode on your favorite podcast platform. We hope you'll join us on this exciting journey to build better homes. On today's episode, we are excited to dive into the intricacies of building sustainable homes with our guest, Tony from TS Constructions. They have been a cornerstone in the realm of energy-efficient building, and today we'll be uncovering their ethos, journey, and the ways they're shaping the future of building, particularly in the Cape. We'll kick things off by getting personal, understanding the driving force behind TS Constructions.
Well, welcome, Tony. It's really great to have you here. And representing TS Constructions as we start off the first episode of our Cape series with Adapt Design with Jess and myself, Anthony from Outlier. Just to begin with, would you be able to just tell our listeners what you do and who you are?
Okay, yeah, not a problem. And thanks for having me along, Anthony and Jess. My name's Tony. I'm from TS Constructions. We're a construction firm that cover just about all disciplines. So we're domestic, we're commercial, we're industrial, we do hospitals. But recently we've had a fairly big focus on sustainable construction, particularly in the domestic market. And we're trying to change some of the local building practices and so a lot of our own practices to try and reflect a better direction of building that's coming. And we're trying to do that in small steps, not go overboard and I guess either scare people off or price ourselves to the point where it's not competitive. So we're trying to take small logical steps to build better housing, better quality housing. Doesn't have to be bigger, doesn't have to be shinier. It just needs to be better for people to live in. Yeah. And that's probably been our focus now for a number of years. Still keeping in the mix of our commercial work. We're still doing a lot of hospital work and school work, for example, but our domestic side of things, we're definitely focusing on that sustainable construction.
Yeah, ultimately, I mean, that has the best outcomes for your clients as well. You're focusing on, value management and these aspects, but at the end of the day, the rollout of that is affordability for clients who are getting high energy efficient homes. So that's great. But before we dive into the details, I did want to just maybe circle back and get a bit of an origin story from you, Tony, and see how did you get to be where you are now? What's your background?
My background, I was at uni studying science and decided to take a gap year. Went to a local building firm and asked the boss there if I could get a job loading trucks or doing something out in the yard, just labouring. He said, "What are you doing?" I sort of told him I'm doing maths and science at Monash, and I ended up in the office doing quoting and takeoffs on buildings. That was one of the local volume builders. Worked with them for 15 years. Jumped out of that for a little while, went into CFA, worked with Country Fire Authority for 3 years, and then went back into building, back to the same company. And after a couple of years, one of the other local firms, the director at the time, the owner of the firm, sort of tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, how'd you like to come and work for me?"
So you've been in the industry for a long time then. It's that sounds a little bit loaded, that question. But
yeah, look, realistically, when I was 18, I thought I'd have the gap year. Coming up 40 years in the industry now, so it's been quite a change. I guess the change in our thoughts and things about construction probably came about. We live at Cape Patterson, beautiful place to live. I've lived here nearly all my life. I moved from Monthaggi, which is 7 kilometres down the road, so I haven't really moved all that far. I went to a community meeting out at Cape Patterson where this developer was coming in proposing this big new development. Went along probably as one of the locals with the pitchforks wanting to run him out of town.
Part of the lynch mob.
Yeah. And to be fair to say, there were a few of us there that were probably looking at a lynch mob. and listened. The developer was Brendan Condon, and just listened to what he had to say about the future of construction and building, and some of the things he was building into the estate. And it's changed to the point where I bought into the estate and I actually live in the estate now. Jess lives in the estate now. So we've actually bought into the concept, going from a lynch mob to being owners in it. So it's a development that has significant open space. It has much better design. It has a set of guidelines that guide the design. You have to meet a set of standards. And we've sort of taken it from the point I got really excited about sustainable construction when I did a diploma in building construction and sustainability.
Yep.
And I've really taken it on board. And we're pretty proud of the fact that we've gone from being build a really good house to being someone now. Our 80 houses that we've done at Cape, we're averaging 8.1 stars.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I wouldn't mind diving into that a little bit more. So TS Constructions were sort of semi-volume sort of numbers to an industry standard anyway. And then they've sort of been able to transition into sustainable energy efficient homes from there.
Now, probably the original company I was with was more the volume builder. TS built quite a number of houses, but they tended to be more architecturally designed and individual client homes rather than probably more of a volume. But we've always been in like unit development type market as well. So we've done a number of large unit developments, a number of 4 or 5 story properties along the coastline. So we've sort of always been more in that specialist market, probably more than the volume market.
Yeah. What has you now reside here in the Cape? TS Constructions are responsible. I drive around and walk around and I can see a large number of signs out the front. What led TS Constructions to follow and pursue that? You mentioned that your average energy rating's 8.1 stars, is it?
8.1 out at the Cape.
Yeah.
We're pretty proud of that because the Cape has a minimum standard of 7.5, and we've chosen to try and exceed that, and we always try and push it up a bit. I'm never too keen to build that minimum standard, but we always do that very cautiously. I'm always very aware that there's a budget involved as well, so you have to balance it out with that. So yeah, we probably try to push it a little bit where we can, try to improve the standard, and we're trying to do that through a number of factors, and I think we'll probably touch on those.
Yeah, we will, definitely. I'm very interested to hear what your clients' feedback is to you as well, and how they find living in these homes in the Cape that you've built. So, Jess, did you...
Was that a push personally from you? Did you have to sort of push that on TS, knowing that they've done these bigger commercial things and they were building beautiful architecturally designed homes, to then sort of shift focus a little bit and move into this field? Was that something that you brought to the table, and then that obviously everyone sort of bought in? There's more than one person that you'd need to convince, obviously, to do that sort of stuff, or?
Yeah, just at TS we have 5 directors. Each of us has specialist roles and probably directions that we like to push. There's a couple of the guys are more into the commercial, the hospitals, that type of thing. But I sort of explained to the guys, and we talked through what we wanted to do, and everyone just jumped on board, to the point that there's a few of us have gone off and done like the green living courses and that. So it's not just myself leading the push. The other guys have come on board pretty easily, and they see the advantages in building to that better standard, and probably putting ourselves as a point of difference to the volume guys around and the guys that are just mass producing things. So it is that little bit of a point of difference that we see we can do something better, and hopefully distance ourselves from some of the other construction.
Yeah. How do you find it personally living here? And I'm assuming designed and built your own home. So that's obviously I don't maybe speak some details of your own home and your experiences living in the Cape.
The house I'm living in at the moment, I'm actually building a second one at the moment that Jess has actually designed. We're waiting for a specific block to come available. We've been waiting for that block for probably 12 years now. It came on the market last year, so we're just in the middle of started construction of our dream home, our forever home. The home that we're in at the moment is an 8.4 star home, and it was probably a little bit of an experience. I've gone home and I've spoken to my wife for years about doing this and doing that, building to a different standard. And I guess it's really highlighted to me the detail that you need to give to a client, because my wife, it wasn't until we actually moved in and, when it was a hot day and she didn't have to turn the aircon on, in the middle of winter when you wake up and the house is still 17 degrees and you haven't had a heater running at all. It's little things like that that have really, the pennies really dropped as to why the houses perform better and why they are better. And it's not, we talk about star rating a lot, but for me, the star rating is not the be all and end all. It's that livability, that comfort level. That's the amazing thing. And it's very hard to describe that to people.
That was definitely something that we noticed moving into our house, coming from a 70s brick veneer place that would have been leaky as all hell. The difference, the first few months of living in our house was mind-blowing. But then sort of, we can always talk the talk, but to walk the walk and share our experience with a client or whatever it might be, that's invaluable. And you'd probably know all the things that don't work in your house, because I know all the things that don't quite work in my house, which is cool because now we can implement those things on the next project or the next build and, onwards and upwards and trying to get better and better with everyone we do.
And it definitely is something that living in the house and living in a house that performs to that next level, I do see things that aren't quite right that I would never have seen. And so we implement those changes. And I'd have to say that one of the biggest things I've enjoyed at the Cape is the evolution of the building design and the material selection, where we learn from every house we do and you implement small changes into the next house. Yeah. So some of the earlier houses that we built in here, they're great. They reach 7, 8 stars or 8.2 stars, whatever. But I look at them now, I think I do so many things differently. And my awareness and my knowledge has increased to the point where, I could so easily, improve the star rating. But as I said, it's not the star rating. I could improve the comfort and the livability for the people. One of the things I love about Cape is living, and I've built the house either side of me, the two behind me and the one across the road. And so I see the people I've built for every day. And I love it when one of the older couples moved in up the road a bit, and one of them came out and he had a fair crack at me one day because...
I was going to say, this sounds like a builder's nightmare for some.
He had a crack at me because he came outside, and it was cold outside. He was really cold, but he came outside in a T-shirt because he was walking around the house in the middle of winter in a T-shirt. He's a bloke in his mid-70s. He came out and said, I froze outside. And to me, if his house is performing to that level, it's doing what it needs to do. It's keeping that level of comfort. And these days, we talk about power bills, we talk about all these things. If your house is performing at that level, that's the extra cost in building to that better standard is quickly absorbed and it's a payback.
Yeah. I mean, for listeners, is there any top 3 things that you would recommend to implement into their homes to achieve those same outcomes that you have?
Yeah, great question off the cuff.
Some
of the things we really concentrate, getting our houses to a degree of air tightness. We're certainly nowhere near passive, and we don't advertise that we're passive. We're not aiming to get to that point at this stage. Mm-hmm. We see building as being an evolution. We're taking people along on a journey, and even the local trades, getting them to come on board and accept some of the things has been a struggle.
Yeah.
We're really lucky. So the key thing I sort of look at is sealing your house, how you seal your house. Jess now draws a great set of details. We've sort of been involved in coming up with the design on some of those details, which is one of the things that I really love, that I can help shape, some of the design and detailing around sealing houses up.
So collaboration's probably in that mix as well is an important thing for
absolutely
the best possible outcome.
It's massive. Yeah. And one of the great things about down at the Cape is there's a few of the builders we regularly talk. Yeah. We had a new builder come onto site probably a couple of years ago now, but one of the first things he did was the developer got him to come and have a chat to us, and we took him around a house we were locking up to show him the points of difference that we were doing. So although they're direct competition, we also see it as we can increase the standard of construction generally. And I think that's a really important thing is, great for a one-off. We're a small builder, but if we can get some of the bigger guys, and we've had a couple of the volume guys actually come down. We had a very significant volume builder come down. They actually brought their whole design team and the construction team down to go through one of our lockups to have a look at that point of difference.
Is education big to you as well?
It is, and it's a bit of an ongoing thing. Probably the best example of how we can educate, particularly our subcontractors, is we get a blower door test done on every house we do.
Every house?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Just a standard thing we do. We've been doing that for a number of years now. When we're getting a blower door test done, if we've got new subbies on site, so whether they're a plumber, a carpenter, an electrician, we get them to come and sit in a blower door test because they don't understand why it's important to seal up gaps until they've actually been in a blower door test. And one of the great things is if you can get the plumbers, the electricians and all that in a house together, when you're doing a blower door test, the amount of, not abuse, but the amount of one-upmanship they put on each other, and you see them, right, next time we're going to do this and this because it'll be better and we won't cop that flack.
Yeah.
And it's little things that we don't think about as an industry. We put a hole through a wall for a vanity waste. In behind a vanity, you can't see it. The amount of air leakage from those 50 mil holes is probably one of the biggest air leakages. That and the mechanical penetrations, probably the two of the bigger air leakage points we had in our houses. So it's getting the guys in to do a blower door test. You walk around with a smoke can.
Yep.
One we can't do much about, our power points. Those little China hats in the power points, amazing amount of air leakage through them. But there's also a point, and we're trying to seal our houses to a point where they're livable and comfortable, but not too tight that we're going to get mold and that. We just started looking at HRV systems and installing a couple of HRV systems through the houses. But at this stage, we're still focusing on building a really good house at a budget that entices people to come on board and accept sustainable construction. We're lucky in the Cape that most of the clients already are on board with that journey, but not all of them. A lot of them, it's a house at the beach. It's a lot of other things. And so we're trying to balance how we approach. If they threw another 100,000 at a house, I could do so many things and improve it. But these days, people don't have that 100,000 to throw at a house. And so we've got to make sure that we pitch our level of comfort and our level of sustainability at a point that meets people's budget.
Yeah, it sounds like you've really crafted that. It's been a big consideration for you. You've been able to almost plot that performance to value ratio quite well with what you do. So
we've worked quite hard on it. Now, as a builder, we can do a whole heap of things, but I keep telling people it's up to guys like Jess because that passive solar design, if you get that right to start with, you can do a lot of things to improve a house economically. If your design's wrong to start with, you're throwing buckets of money to get a house to a good level.
Yeah.
And so that passive solar design is a critical first step. We've built one house in the Cape, was 9.2 stars. We modelled that house without insulation in the roof and walls and with single glazing, and we still met 6-star with that house without any insulation and single glazing.
Wow.
And that's the passive solar design. So that's a key critical first step. From there, we can alter, and we do this a lot with our product selection. Our window selection, for example, is based on clients' budget and where we're at with energy rating. As I said, I always like to push a little bit higher than the 7.5 star minimum.
Yeah.
I think Victoria's current 7-star minimum, is we should have taken a jump and gone better, but pushing that through industry associations and that, where there's some voices out there pushing for it, but there's some key players in the industry that are saying, no, we've gone too far. And that really annoys me because it's those louder voices that have got the marketing budgets and that to promote that we're going too far. So it's all about that balance. You've got to find a balance. Our windows, to an extent, our insulation, all those sort of things all have a big impact on it.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind talking maybe quickly on the specifics of that. That's probably where you come in, Jess, because I imagine you're probably doing energy ratings very early on in the design work in collaboration here.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's something that happens sort of as part of our preliminary design stage. We need to make informed decisions before we go off and get these things approved. It's not something that needs to be an afterthought, like, oh, we've got to get this to 7.5 stars now. We better do an energy rating and see how it's going. We do it pretty often. We do it every job. We do it really early in the piece. That way we can we review the data and make an informed decision. Like maybe we do need to reduce that window. Maybe we've overcooked the glazing. But then, we've got to get the balance right. If, we live by the beach, the views are to the south.
Yeah.
That's something we sort of come up against on every project, not only in the Cape, but in Bass Coast. We've got views, we've got ocean views. They want to grab them. So we're going to introduce some south glazing. So how can we what can we do with that? But yeah, window selection obviously plays a massive part in the energy overall star rating of a house.
Can we walk through the details, like the actual specifics of some of these specifications? So if we're looking at windows, I know listeners are very detail orientated. So
sure.
What sort of view values would you recommend, or even the solar heat gain coefficient values?
Yeah, sure. So we're a colder climate down here. We have sort of like a starting point with all our energy ratings, which is basically windows we get from the two major local window suppliers locally. I'd say our U values are always hover around the 3, either north or south of the 3 for awning, sliding doors, fixed windows, obviously a little bit lower. And that solar heat gain coefficient, we want to be getting that up around sort of the 0.5, 0.6 if we can. That's a little bit hard to achieve on some windows. But usually, if we can get around those, that's a good starting point for all of our projects. And we can always upgrade from there if we need to. So then that's an aluminium double glazed window that we can get. So budget wise, beautiful. Yep. If we then want to look to upgrade, or the clients want to push it a little bit harder, then we can start having a look at maybe timber, maybe UPVC, maybe thermally broken aluminium, that sort of stuff. Knowing that there's a cost implication in upgrading to that, but we know the values are going to be a little bit better and work in their and our favour in terms of the energy rating. But we always start at that affordable sort of medium range aluminium window.
Are you doing under slab installation on these projects?
Every project.
Okay. Every house is under slab. Talking as a client rather than a builder, running through with Jess on the energy ratings, we have good views to the south on our next house. And so we've gone with triple glazed UPVC on those south windows to get the glass area up, but at the same time keep our energy rating at a respectable level. Some of the big changes I find with clients, and there was a long time where there was a reluctance from clients to accept windows that didn't go down to floor level. They had to be full height windows. And I found that has changed now. We're getting people to lift the sills up a bit. And it's pretty easy when you can sit at a chair at a table and say, well, that's your view down there. Do you want to look at your decking, or do you want to look at the view? What are you actually looking at the window for? And sometimes reducing that glazing area on the south is achievable just by sitting people down at table height and saying, well, look out the window. This is what you're aiming for. You don't need the picture window that's 2.7 high and 6 metres long, because you're not looking at that.
Yeah.
How many times have you both had that conversation?
Yeah, just a couple, mate. Just a couple. Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. And I can see there's a few numbers in front of you as well, Tony. What are these test results? Do you have?
One of the things that we do, our blower door tests across the estate. So far, I think we've done 60 of the houses in the Cape itself.
60?
Yep.
Okay.
We're averaging about 4.9. We were trying to get down, and we looked at the standards all around the world, and we decided that one of the German standards at 3.2 before they introduced HRV looked really good. And so we were trying to get down to under 4, so in that 3.7 to 4 range. Bit of further investigation, a bit of further research, it's probably getting a bit too tight without HRV. And so we actually have to loosen some of our houses up.
Right. You're testing every house, so you're able to know. You actually know this information. That's great.
It's an interesting process when you get a house test done, And we had one house blower door test that came out with a 2 in front of it. And that was just nothing special. It was just the way we built the house. We didn't do any special sealing or anything. It just came out with a 2. And we had to tweak a few things to back it off a little bit.
Is that so? External wrap is taped to windows and doors as well? Externally?
Yeah, we basically use a triple seal system around our windows. So as well as taping to the windows, we put a foam bead in between the window and the framing.
Yes.
And then we cork that. And so we have a triple seal all the way around. We take our sealing to the point where, you know, our sparkies now, as they're doing the roughing, they have a tube of silicone with them, and they seal anything on an external wall, they seal any penetration. So where the sparky used to go through with a 30mm drill bit and whack holes everywhere, now he knows he's going to carry that silicone. So all of a sudden now the sparkies have worked out that they can put a 10mm hole through and feed a cable through. They don't need 30mm. You know, plumbing's the same. They don't need to whack a big hole to whack a half-inch pipe through the wall.
Yep.
Because they have to seal it up later. So it's just little things like that. We seal under every external frame. We silicon seal under the frames.
Under the frame as well. So just to clarify, you're putting a bead on the bottom plate and then standing it up, or are you doing a double bottom plate?
No, we're putting bead underneath it. Yeah.
And
so we do put double bottom plate on a lot of jobs anyway, but we're actually putting a silicon bead around the bottom as well, because that was one of our primary sources of air leakage.
Out of curiosity, Jess, have you started playing around with the blower door results in First Rate 5?
Not
yet?
No, not as yet.
No. I'll look forward to hearing the results once that goes live. So there'll be some increased star ratings coming your way, I think, given those numbers you just put forward. So I know I've started to explore it now using Hero, and we're seeing anywhere from a 0.6 to a 1.2 star increase on the ratings by having similar numbers to what you've described there. So it's pretty. It just goes to probably show the importance of air tightness or draft proofing, as you sealing, whatever you want to refer to it as, and how much of an improvement that can make to the energy efficiency, comfort.
Yeah. So default setting for First Rate, I think it's 10. 10 air changes. So every project that you've done in here, especially, is well under that. So based on that, every star rating you've got would be better than what it actually is on paper.
I think if I came up with a blower door test of 10, I'd hang my head in shame. Really, that's pretty poor.
It's incredible. I don't know if there has been another builder that I've met who has produced 60 homes of that caliber. That's great.
Yeah, look, it's just been an interesting process for us to run through, and actually it gives us that really good checkpoint and we don't do it till the house is finished. So unlike Passive, where they do the mid-build one, we're just doing one at the end.
Yeah.
And that's one of those evolution things where you walk around with the tester and his little spray can of magic, and you find leakage points, and you think, would never have considered that as a leakage point. And so you work out just tightening them up. You know, cavity doors, the bane of my existence. Particularly a cavity door where you've got a wall junction running into the cavity seems to be the hardest thing to seal and the hardest thing to get right.
Yeah. These all sound really cost effective. I mean, I know I hear it a lot. Well, not so much anymore, but maybe I'm in a bit of an echo chamber. But you know, the sustainability or energy efficient homes cost more. But from what you're describing to me, these are not things that I would say have high cost values for the outcomes you're getting.
The sustainable construction doesn't have to cost more. It will cost a little bit more. Like we've got increased, RVs and insulation, and as we know, with the last couple of years and the fact that we import nearly all our insulation, cost of insulation significantly jumped. And so to go from, to a 5 to a 6 or to a 7 has jumped quite significantly in the last couple of years. But if you get that initial design right, it doesn't have to cost that much more. Things like a couple of tubes of silicone under frames, a bit of beading around the windows, we're talking a couple of $100. We're not talking thousands. I did an experiment, it was probably 5 years ago now, where I took a house that we built at 8.2 stars. We downrated it to 6 stars, which was the Victorian standard at the time. And the cost difference was about $6,000 to go from 6 to 8.2 at the time.
That's incredible.
And we ran the modelling through we have a calculator, similar to what Sustainability Victoria have. One of our residents at the Cape actually developed an online calculator for us. So I've got this calculator that I plug in the size of the house, the number of occupants, whether they consider themselves light or heavy energy users, the PV size, the energy rating, and it gives us a suggested power bill per quarter. So we can then play with the variables and say, look, if we take you from 7.7 to 8.2 stars, rough cost, we're probably going to have to do this and this to get it to that. We might have to go from R5 to R6, a couple of minor tweaks. Your power bill is going to drop by this much. Your cost is going to be this much. It probably got a 2-year payback period or whatever.
Wow.
And so people, when they see that, and you say to them, remember, you're living in this house for 10 years. So for 7 or 8 years, you're actually making money out of your house. It's not costing, it's going to cost you now, but in the long term, you're making money out of your house. And that, having that on the screen in front of them is a really good eye-opener. And sometimes, sometimes I'll say, you're at 7.7 stars, let's leave it there. It's not economical for you to increase it. But we've got 5 kilowatts of PV on the roof. If we stick another kilowatt on, which is not expensive, your power bill drops by this much.
Yep.
The system also allows us to enter a battery in there. And what I love about it is the designer came up with this big red square that if a battery is not going to make a significant difference, it comes up with a big red square across the screen that says battery not recommended. So,
Gosh, I was going to say, I hope this is a publicly available document or bit of software that you've described there, but whole of home, that's basically what it sounds like you're describing.
it's pretty much a precursor to a whole of home.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's something that we paid to get developed probably 7 or 8 years ago. So we've been using it for
Incredible.
7 or 8 years. It's just something that one of our residents here is very, very clever and very knowledgeable on these things.
What a
And he
community.
designed up a bit of a software package for us.
Have
and
you-
it has inputs for the power costs and all that. So we can alter those inputs and that sort of thing. And
Yeah. Have you started to explore that as well, Jess? The whole of home
We've just started having a bit of a play. My own house, for instance. Yeah, just put that one through. Some of the higher energy rated houses. Just to see where it comes in at. The numbers are pretty impressive. Which is kind of nice to know that there's sort of a bit of data to back it up.
Yeah, I asked because a bit of a disclaimer. The information you've mentioned was maybe 6 years ago.
Yeah.
We've been through a lot since then. We've seen significant price increases and labour increases, as you've touched on as well. So we can't say that that's going to be accurate to today's standard, but with the whole of home assessments, that's something that everyone can be speaking to their local energy rater or thermal assessor and getting an indication of what that looks like very early on in the design as well. And then it's very evident throughout this conversation, the collaboration you both have, it's just at a very high standard. So
it was really funny having a couple of our houses when Sustainability Victoria were doing the testing on the whole of home. We work with them with a number of our houses on it and seeing the numbers come out at the end. And one of the people from Sustainability Victoria, I was talking to her on the phone, she said, you're really not the target market that we're aiming for this.
I was going to say, you'd skew the data. It's not the story they're trying to tell.
I think there was a few houses that went through the the Victorian Energy Scorecard.
Yeah.
They all just get 10.
Yeah.
Everyone in here that ran that process through 10.
Yeah.
And the only time we didn't get 10 is because they hadn't installed the blinds yet.
Is there anything further, Jess, that you can think of that you'd like to chat with Tony about it? I mean, I could continue on. I can see how much information and data that you have here, and it's just incredible. But I know that we don't have all day to be able to dive into those details, at least this time round.
Look, I just want to say one thing. Over the last 5 years, I've learned more in the last 5 years, I think, doing building design than I had previous. And it's only because of collaborations with builders that are happy to share information. The talk of community, not just only here, but as Tony mentioned, with all the builders, designers, sub-trades, and the way that we've all kind of pushing each other and building each other up and sharing knowledge and information, it has been incredible. And I just want to say thank you for willingly sharing your knowledge and time with us. Because I don't think I'd know as much stuff as I do now, or I would have learned as many things as we have over the last 5 years without input from yourself. It's been a very fun and interesting journey over the last 5 years, and I love that. I love that you guys are pushing us to be better, and we're pushing right back. It is a good collaboration, and it's just for the benefit of all the homeowners and the local community. It's great.
Oh, the Cape's been exemplary. Like this
it is one of those things that you love to walk around and you see a builder that's come onto the site and he's filling his pockets of his frames where the external junctions are, and you just don't see that. You go through a volume of stuff, you don't see that sort of thing. I love, I'll get a plan from Jess and it'll have an energy rating. It'll be, oh, look, we've achieved, 7.8 stars. But if we do this and this, let's go.
It's not just a compliance. It's not just a stamp at the end to get the building permit. You are actually, assessing this and consulting and making it happen. Well,
And that's one of those keys that we spoke about, in that, Jess has got that energy rating knowledge, which is brilliant, because he can say to me, let's do this and it'll increase it by this. Or sometimes I'll say, oh, look, I'm happy that Jess will say that. I'm just going to run it through one more time and I'm just going to do this. And I've probably got the knowledge on the price, and I'll say, well, no, look, if we do that, it's going to push a budget. It just comes up with an alternative. And I love that. Working in collaboration, we get something that the clients love at the right, what I consider the right sort of price. And I think that's an important key element. I keep coming back to sustainability has to be affordable.
Absolutely critical. And it seems as though you must talk almost weekly, both of you. So,
I'd say daily, actually.
just to give an understanding for the listeners on just exactly how much you are collaborating. So that's great. And that's how you get the outcomes that you both get. Phenomenal. Well, I want to say thank you as well, Tony. Are there any parting words or anything, words of wisdom? We do always ask our guest if there's one thing in industry or various things in industry that they'd want to change or see change or improve on.
I would have said, in answer to that, I would have said a couple of years ago, we were very strongly pushing for mandatory blower door testing. I want to take it a step further. I want to see the industry have a mandatory as-built certification.
How many times have you heard that?
Lots. That's actually my driving force as well. And I have a research division of our business that specifically does as-built verifications with blower door testing and thermography for that reason.
It frustrates the hell out of me that I know that people out there are being sold houses that are 7.5 stars or 8 stars or whatever it is, and they're terrible. They're not built as they've been designed or as they've been documented and modelled. You walk around, you look how the insulation's done and how much of it's missing. And I mentioned the cavities and the external wall junctions. If you add up all your junctions in a house, you've got more than 5% of the wall is actually in space of those junctions.
Wow.
And so you take 5% of the insulation out of the walls and it has such a big degradation on their insulation value, but people don't understand that. And so I'd love to see a proper as-built verification and testing.
I'm so glad you just shared that bit of information at the end there, that you sort of equated that by not insulating your junctions, on your wall junctions, it equates to about 5%, which is what Sustainability Victoria have determined to be the amount that would have up to a 50% reduction in the overall efficiency of the insulation itself.
That's correct. Yeah.
Wow.
And that was, we actually modelled on one of the early houses that we did. We took the windows out and then we took the wall junctions out and the intersections out. And it was just over 5% of the wall space was basically uninsulated.
Wow.
And so we've got to the point, and we'll have a new contractor come on board and they'll start wrapping the house up. Hey guys, we've got to rip all that wrapping off because you haven't done the junctions. We make it, there's no looking at it, so it'll be right. No one will know it. It'll be covered with cladding. It's got to be right. And I reckon we should have some as-built verification to say that it is right.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Tony. I really appreciate your time. Just heartfelt, thanks as well. And, I'm actually looking forward to chatting again. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface on the level of detail and information that you have to share.
There's so much more we can get into.
Let's do part 2 in the future. All right. Well, thank you. And we look forward to chatting again soon.
All right, thanks for having me along.
A quick note before we wrap up. The views, discussions, and insights shared in this podcast are for entertainment and informational purposes only and not a substitute for professional advice. Please consult with a qualified expert for any specific queries related to your individual needs. Now, with that said, we really hope you enjoyed the podcast. Thank you for listening to the Outlier and Adapt podcast. You can find helpful links and contact information regarding this episode in our show notes. If you like our show, please leave a review and make sure you subscribe to never miss a new episode. If you have further questions for us or want to share some additional feedback, please feel free to DM us on Instagram or Facebook. Until next time on the Outlier and Adapt podcast.